In this section, we will run through one of the 5 important fundamentals, that is external input, or we can call it as EI. So if you remember the bigger picture what we discussed in the previous section, we are told that external inputs are nothing but the user inputs, but that was only for the understanding's sake. I had said that external inputs are user inputs, but basically yes, external inputs are they help us to move the data, they help us to move the data from any external application boundary to the internal application boundary. So that external application boundary can be a user who is entering something from a screen, so the screen becomes the external input, or it can be some kind of a batch process which runs and reads a file and puts data in the ILFs or the internal application files. So basically we can say that EI moves the data into the application from the external application boundary to the internal application boundary. One of the very significant thing about EI is that it maintains and updates ILF information. So for example, if you take up a customer screen, then it maintains an ILF called as customer, and the EI is the customer screen itself. Now there are some important points to be considered when we count a EI. For every add, update, delete, you need to count one EI. So for add you count one EI, for update you count one EI, and delete you count one EI. So if you have a screen which does a maintenance of add, update, delete, so basically you will be counting 3 EIs in that. And second, a very important thing is that every input screen is not a EI. As I said, that EI should maintain. It's mandatory that it should maintain and update ILF information. So this is one of the very important fundamental of EI. If it doesn't maintain and update ILF information, then it is not a EI. For example, it's possible that you have a search screen. A search screen will definitely not maintain anything. It just searches and displays the output. So that cannot be a EI. So that's why I'm coming back to the point where I said previously that EIs are screens. Basically no. EIs are they help us to move the data from the external application boundary to the internal application boundary. So every input screen is not a EI. Process, it's possible that you have Windows processes or some kind of batch process which maintain ILF. So process that maintain ILF should be counted as a EI. Now here's a customer screen, a very simple customer screen, where a guy can put in data, customer code, check the country, take this and add customer. Now if you see, the add customer will be counted as one EI. Okay, the update customer will be counted as again a second EI and a third EI, that is a delete. So we have 3 EIs here. So basically, even if we have one screen, we need to count it as 3 EI, because there are 3 ways by which the ILF information is getting modified. And when we say ILF, so in behind this we have something called as a customer table. Okay, don't again treat internal logical file as tables, but it should be from the user's perspective. Does user think that yes, there can be a customer table, then there is a ILF. So yes, over here user will definitely understand that whenever he puts in information, it gets saved into some kind of file. So yes, there is a customer ILF behind it, and there is 3 customer EI, which basically is updating those ILF, updating the customer ILF. And as I said previously that every input screen is not a EI. For example, here we have an input screen which just helps you to select a country and probably generate some kind of report. So this is not a EI because it doesn't maintain any kind of ILF information. So query screens, login screen, menus, should not be counted as EI, even if there is a user input. So remember this very important. This is a very important fundamental. Every input screen is not a EI. Second, as I said, EI is all about transferring the data from the external application boundary to the internal application boundary. So it's very much possible that you can have a batch process, something like this, and this batch process can read some files, and these files are probably which are out of the control of the application. It is something like, it can be a file which has been sent by some third party. So if a batch process is reading these files and putting into a database, then that process should also be counted as a EI, because it's moving data from an external application boundary to a internal application boundary. So always remember that EIs are not screens basically, but they are facilitators which help us to move data from the external application boundary to the internal application boundary. Now as I said, that measures, or we can say, when we say that a software is complex, uh, everything is about complexity. So definitely when we are counting the EI, we should also count the complexity. We should be able to count the complexity. So complexity of the EI is counted by using two entities of function point, that is the FTR and the DETs. So FTR means the file type reference and DET means the data element type. We'll in the next screens we'll see that what exactly this means. But for now, remember that complexity of a EI will depend on the FTRs and DETs, because it's possible that you have a complicated screen, a transactional complicated screen, and it's possible that you have a simple screen which does only master table update. So we definitely need to segregate the complexity of both of these EIs. So first thing, as I said, that one of the important elements is a DET. So we'll first understand the fundamental of DET. DETs are nothing but fields and attributes. So if you remember the customer screen, we have the customer code, the customer name. These are DETs. They are unique and they are user recognizable. Means in the sense, user should understand that there is a DET. For instance, that you can have internally some kind of DET called as identity seed or something. If the user doesn't identify, if user doesn't understand the importance of that, or if he is not able to feel it from outside, then you cannot count that field as a DET. Foreign keys are also counted as DETs. So if you have a table or something, and you have foreign keys with them, so you can count them once, but count them once for the child table, but not for the primary table. So if you have a, let's say, a customer table and you have a customer addresses table, so it's possible that you have a foreign key in the customer address table. So you need to only count the foreign key only once in the child table, not in the primary table. Auto-generated fields are also counted as DETs, as they are maintained in the ILFs. So again, if you have auto-generated fields, some counter or something, you need to count them as DETs. Again, it should be user recognizable. If the user doesn't recognize these fields, right? For example, the user will understand, yes, there is a relationship which maintains the customer table and the customer address table. So that's why we count the foreign key. If the user doesn't understand it, right, then definitely you cannot count them as a DET. So it's basically very much requirement driven. Whatever is in the requirement document, you should be able to map to function points. Duplicate fields populated by the same user input should not be counted as DETs. So for example, that if you have a field which has been populated by only one input text box, means you have two fields in the table which are maintained for some reason for the programming logic or for some kind of thing. So these two fields, if they are coming from the same input, it should be counted as only one DET. Error messages which are displayed should also be counted as DETs. So now here's a screen, the customer screen which we discussed previously. Now let's count these DETs. Okay. So as I said, DETs are fields, user identified fields. So I have 1, 2, 3. So remember, this is auto number, but as I said, auto numbers are also counted as DETs. 4. Now here, the voucher date and the audit date are taken from today's date. So basically, only one input will actually flourish these two DETs. So I have counted them as only one. So 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, I missed the 8, I think, but this is 8 actually. 8, 9, 10, 11. Now even I have counted the error message as a DET. So we can say that in all over here we have 12 DETs. My counting is currently wrong here, so it's basically 12 because I missed the 8 of it. So basically we have 12 DETs in this customer screen. Now